Welcome to Adventurers University, a series of hyper-brief video courses prepared for you to learn the specific rules and mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There are also tips and tricks on how to play and run games, and even how to create custom worlds to craft your own stories in. Today we'll be discussing ability scores, what they are, and how they affect your game. Just like any other game, there needs to be some way to measure out your physical and mental capabilities as you play your character. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, that's been sorted into 6 separate characteristics. We've got strength, which is a measure of your physical power, dexterity, which is a measure of your agility, constitution, which measures your endurance, intelligence, measuring your reasoning and memory, wisdom, measuring your perception and insight, and charisma, measuring your force of personality. Each of these 6 abilities represents your character's ability to perform various things in the world. For example, a high strength score represents how easily it is to smash open a door. A high intelligence represents how easy it is to memorize things. Each score also has an associated modifier with it, directly correlated with what the score is. When you create your character using one of a few different methods, you assign a score and its associated modifier to the various abilities. These methods include rolling for your stats, which is usually rolling 4d6, dropping the smallest number and adding the remaining 3. Using a standard array, which, according to the book, is 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. Or there's a point-buy system you could use instead, where there's a bit more flexibility, utilizing a given number of points which you divvy up between the different stats. I'll be discussing these methods in much more detail in later videos. And of course, the Dungeon Master can modify any of these as they see fit. But these are what are the most common methods for assigning your ability scores and modifiers. At least they're the ones that are listed in the player's handbook. When playing the game, the ability scores are largely ignored. However, the associated modifiers are used in most of your die rolls one way or another. Typically, if you're rolling a d20, you're going to be applying one of your modifiers to it. And if you want to know what your exact modifier is going to be, the easiest way is to look up the chart in the player's handbook or online. There are also other ways that you can figure it out just because math, but I'll describe some of those methods that I use at least in the notes section. Before moving on to the after-class notes though, I do want to bring up one last thing about ability scores. In the monster manual, there is the commoner, the average person that you'll meet. They have 10s in all of their abilities, which gives a 0 modifier. If you have less than 10, you have negative modifiers, meaning that you're below average. If you have higher than 10, you start getting positive modifiers, which means that you're above average. The people who are adventurers, like the characters that you would create, or the monsters that you might encounter, would have a few abilities that are above average, possibly well above average, depending on the situation. Like a dragon has a lot of very above average things. Whereas other situations, like a wild animal, would have a very low set of especially things like charisma or intelligence. The significance of this is more related to the role play of things, but I did want to bring it up just so that attention was brought to it, even with the charts that I put up on the screen elsewhere in the video. And with that, it's time for the after-class notes! Thank you for attending today's lesson. Stick around for the aforementioned notes, which are more detailed examples, as well as some general thoughts and tips of mine about ability scores and how to use them. Or move on to the next course. But first, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to support Adventurers University, visit the Patreon at www.patreon.com/adventurersuniversity. And please, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you liked and didn't like about this video. I am still working out some things. I'll mention some more stuff at the end. I'm even planning on maybe doing some format changes, switching from the floating head to the possibly an animated style. I've come across some interesting resources for that. So let me know if you think that would be more interesting. But for now, on to the notes. To start, I do want to cover one of the biggest hurdles that I've encountered with roleplay and ability scores. People seem to think that just because they have a not amazing score. That means needing to role play as though they're a terrible, incompetent person. I can't count the number of times that I've seen people with a 10 in charisma or in intelligence start acting like cavemen, acting as though they can't talk or don't know what a door is. I mean, you're an average person. Average people know a lot of things. So my point to this is, don't head yourself into thinking, oh, well, I'm not the best, therefore I'm obviously the worst. And on that same note, having a 0 modifier doesn't mean that you're incompetent. 0 modifier just means that you aren't above average. We could go so much deeper into this topic as far as roleplay goes, but this video is more about the ability scores themselves, so we'll save that for another video down the road. So now let's talk about choosing your ability scores. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you should always pick one ability score over the next, or even give a long list of, in this situation, you should have this ability score. This is stuff that you'll pick up over time, and they highly depend on the type of character you want to build. No, rather, I'm going to say that, in my opinion, especially for new players, it's better to take a one-trick pony over a jack of all trades. In other words, pick one thing, maybe two things, to be really good at, and then everything else, eh. I say this because in a turn-based game where your abilities are measured in numbers, it's really easy to feel outclassed by someone else who has a specialty in something that you have moderate abilities in. Not that you need to be the best at everything, but it's nice to feel like you're the best at something. Because, admit it, everyone likes to feel special sometimes. Switching gears again, I did promise that I would give a couple tips on how to calculate your modifiers on the fly. If you look at the chart again, you may notice that the modifier only goes up on every even ability score. So 10 is 0, 12 is +1, 14 is +2, etc. So you can either do the math and say -10 divided by 2, that's your modifier. If you're good at math, then that'll make sense. Or you can just say 10 is 0, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's how I do spells. They have something similar where you just count the numbers, and on every even number, it goes up by 1. The method doesn't work as well when counting down, unfortunately. It still works. You just need to remember that it's every odd number when you count down. The reason for that is because they didn't make 0 modifier the baseline. They made one ability score the ground level, and they just count one ability score is a -5 modifier, and then they went up from there. So you just have to, depending on how you look at it, you need to change your tactic and how you do it. But that's the way I do it. I remember that 10 is 0. Every 2 above that, every even number above that is a new modifier going up. And if I go down to 9 or 8, that's -1. 7 or 6 is going to be a -2. It's very rare for a player to get lower than a -1 on any ability score, because with the standard array, that's the lowest. When doing point buy, even if you put no points into a skill, you get a 8, which is a -1. The only way to get less than that is if you roll for your stats, and the Dungeon Master doesn't fiat and say, that's a little debilitating, why don't you roll again? Now, if you really want to, go for it. I've seen plenty of character with really low stats, and the player had a blast. But generally speaking, people tend to have more fun when they're able to succeed more, just because we're kind of hardwired to want to succeed in things. So, and with that, I believe we'll end for the day. I do want to make another quick note about the quality of the videos. You may notice the giant banner is gone from the bottom of the screen. I still need to play around with the lights, a little bit with the sound, but I did get some new hardware. I paid for some new software. Now that I have all my ducks in a row, I should be able to start churning things out a little bit more quickly. And as I get more rehearsed, more practiced, get a rhythm of things, I'll be able to start doing it more rapidly, even with that. So, yay, things are getting going. And thank you for those of you who have already subscribed to the channel and gone to the Patreon. It means so much to me. It's not a lot, but for a new start like me, seeing that kind of support is a tremendous boost in morale, and it's going to make me want to turn out even more videos even faster. So thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next course.